Hey everyone, it's Nina. Thanks for joining me today for a new video. Today I'm showcasing Simon Says Stamp's STAMPtember exclusive with Hero Arts called Make Some Noise. I'm going to turn this stamp set into a fun little fall scene using these adorable critters, and I'll show you how I made these really cool trees to frame up my card. So here is the Make Some Noise stamp set. It does come with coordinating dies, which you can purchase with the stamp set, or you can purchase the stamp set alone. I'm also going to be using this Arched Forest die and embossing folder from Simon Says Stamp. This embossing folder creates this really nice, beautiful treescape, and the die is fantastic for creating some dimension. So I'm actually going to die cut the forest die first, and go ahead and cut that from some white cardstock. I'll poke out all the little negative areas, and then I'm going to run this through my embossing folder. I'm going to line this up inside of the embossing folder with the trees. You can feel it kind of nest into place, and then I'll close the other side of the embossing folder and run this through my die cut machine, so that way I get those trees embossed onto this die cut. I want to create a really neat dimensional forest border. So this is just going to add some additional dimension to this card. I am going to trim down both of these panels so they're a little bit smaller than an A2 card, and this will also give me a really nice clean edge too. So I have my two pieces and we're ready to do some ink blending. I'm starting first with Latte. This is a nice warm brown color from Simon Says Stamp. It's one of their Positively saturated ink colors. And I'm just covering most of this tree frame with that ink. Then I'm going to bring in Mocha, and I'm going to use a smaller blending brush and a lighter hand, so that way I can apply this ink in less areas and basically shade these trees. I want to still be able to see some of that latte underneath, so I don't want to cover everything up with this Mocha ink, but this is going to really capture a lot of the embossed details of the trees. So using a light hand, I added that Mocha, and then I'm also adding some Celery and Perfection to the bottom to create some grass. And I'll go back over with a little bit more of that Mocha to warm up the grass and also enhance the bottom of the trunks. Moving on to the other panel that we embossed, I'm going to color my sky on this one. So this is going to help me know where to transition between the colors because we can see the trees on this embossed background. I started first with Melon in the center, and then I'm going to work with TIDEPOOL around the edges. And this is really helping now bring those trees to life so you can actually see where the color is going to be. And that tree die cut that we just worked on is going to cover up a lot of this blending, but you're going to see the sky color in between really come through, which is what I wanted. And finally, the last color I'm using is Twilight, and I'm using that around the very most edges to darken up the sky a little bit. Here I'm going to lay the frame on top so you can see where this is going, and this just looks fantastic. Using some foam squares, because I always love to add a little bit of dimension, and I do plan on tucking some of my animals in between the trees, I'm going to attach my frame on top of the background panel. Oscar has a lot to say here, so he's joining me as I'm voicing this over. Anyway, I have my panels complete and we're ready to start stamping. So I've got a bunch of the leaves already stamped down onto some hammer mill white cardstock, and I'm also going to stamp the critters and a couple more leaves. These leaves I'm actually going to cut out and then use as the leaves for the trees that we created for our background. I used fall colors for this, but you could color these green or whatever color you'd like. I'm using Copic markers to do all the coloring, and I do have the markers that I used linked below in the video description and on my blog if you're curious about any of them. But I kept the coloring really simple, mostly 2-color blends for everything. Because these images are pretty detailed, I didn't want to get too crazy with the shading. I used neutral colors for the animals. So we colored the raccoon, of course, the classic black and white. I used grays for that. And then for the squirrel, I ended up switching over to some warm grays, which I think really captures the color scheme of the squirrel really well. And I made sure to darken his tail up more than the body. For each of these critters, I always love to add a little bit of touch of pink. So I used some light arm markers to add some pink to their bellies. And I also added it to their cheeks. Finally, I colored the hedgehog with some light brown markers. And all of their musical instruments I actually colored with the same colors that I used for the leaves. Other than the drum, I did use a blue color that I thought would match well with the sky. Alright, so it's time to attach everything down. I'm going to use some foam squares to attach my little characters here, but for the leaves, I'm actually just going to go straight down with liquid glue. I want to make sure that these are adhered down really well, and because they're going to be sitting on some pretty thin spots on top of the trees, I figured the liquid glue was probably the easiest way to get those adhered. Now you'll see that some of them are hanging off the edge of my card panel here, and once all of this has completely dried, I'll actually come through with my scissors and just chop all of the ends off, so that way it's flush with the rest of the card. Right now it looks a little crazy. So here we've cleaned it up, looks much better, and I love the scene that this is building. I did want to add some of the music notes from the stamp set onto this background, just to really enhance the musical theme here. So I'm going to line this up inside of my Misty tool and stamp this with Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. I'll stamp that down right in that middle section of my scene. And then also I'll stamp my sentiment. So I'm going to use the Let's Celebrate greeting, and I stamped that down onto some black cardstock with embossing ink. I did prep the surface with my powder tool prior to stamping. And then I'm going to use Simon Says Stamp cream embossing powder to go ahead and put on top of the stamped sentiment. And I'll tap off the excess and heat set this with my tool. I like the cream because it's a little softer, and because I have such warm colors here, I thought that really would go nicely instead of the harsh white. To attach my greeting, I am going to use some foam squares in black from Simon Says Stamp, and finally stick my panel onto its A2 card base. So that's it. That is the scene that I built with the Simon Says Stamp Make Some Noise Hero Arts STAMPtember exclusive. This is a limited edition stamp set and only available while supplies last, so if you do like it, you're going to want to grab it while you can. I have links below for you to check out if you're interested. I hope you enjoyed watching this technique of building this really fun scene with that arched forest embossing folder and die. You could swap out the stamps that I used today for any stamps you like, so don't feel like you have to use the exact same things I used today to make a similar scene. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks again for tuning in and watching this video. I'll be back very soon to share more with you all, but until then, I hope you have a wonderful day.